Right, wafana. Welcome back. This is your final way. Saka inini muri kuzoona masamba achinji. I'm going to put this here. You remember the night of long knives? This is my knife. Richard, Cynthia, take sure. Anyone ari kungoita kunge asiri kunzwisa. Inini I want 100% pass rate wafana. Kwete zvakaitirwa class yamachemedzo uko. Kuti wange muchadzingisa munhu basa. Kuti wange munhu achadzingiswa basa wafana. Munoda kuomesera vanhu straight. Right. Let's dive straight into it. So we are going to start with the Mau Mau rebellion. Kungonza kuti rebellion akati munobva mafara. Right. The Mau Mau rebellion, this happened in Kenya. But ndisati ndaenda kuti yakaitika sei, zvazvamboita sei. We need to go to the background. So let's start. The year is 1888. The BEAC, the British East Africa Company. Handikuzasi kuno kuti handine British South Africa Company, BSAC. Uku kwangu ne British East Africa Company. Yakapiwa charter. It had a charter from the royal government. Yekuti itaima from the British government. Yekuti itaima ma operations enyu. So they were operating in the land that we now know as Kenya. But then they went broke. In 1895, they could not sustain the operations. So the British government took over. The British government took over. But they were running the country as a protectorate, not as a colony. So up to this point, they were running it as a protectorate. Right. So in 1920, it officially then became a colony. So it then became the Kenya colony, right? So it is Kenya Ravana. Zvakaitika ndezvekuti there were some local tribes. Kune the Embu, kune the Kikuyu, which is the dominant tribe, and other tribes. They had a name that they gave to the mountains, right? Because sometimes because of the snow, it would be white. So the mountain of whiteness. Mountain of whiteness. Is was zvinhu zvokuti munozongotaurawo muri papati. Zvinogona kusabvunzwa zvazvo muzama, but munongotaurawo muri pabus stop kuti muratidze kuti muri vanhu vakadzidza. In their local languages, it's Kiinya kana kuti Kirinyaga. Saka pakauya varungu manje kuti vabate izvi zvana Kirinyaga zvana Kiinya zvakavaremera. So what they did is what we call a bastardization of the word. Saka kungotora word rinongoti Kinya, just like what happened here kuti uko kunonzi kumarondera kwachief marondera kwainzi marandelas. Varungu vanoti hazi kuda kuanisa izvi. Handitika uko nemakondo onzi lomagundi. Ndakambokuudzai pataita zvemaportuguese. Ndekupi futi kumwe ndani mwana, right? Mutare wainzwa varungu vachiti umtare, right? So anyway, they were running this as a colony, right? Vakuirana secolony manje. Saka munoziva zvinoitika mucolony ndezvekuti vanhu vanotanga, wait, is my taster, right? So vanhu mucolony vanotanga kudzvinyirirwa. People are not treated equally. The same thing that was happening in this country when we were colonized and in so many other countries. So in 1928, kwakabva kwaita vanhu the rise of nationalism. Rise of nationalism. Are we still together? Ungatange first day nekuraraka. Iwe mfana iwe. First day wakutorara. Chichocho. Right. So anyway, rise of nationalism. Vanhu vari kuti aiwa isusu we are equal, tinofana kutiitwa zvakafanana, respect every citizen of this country. So kwakafomwa hence the Kikuyu Central Assembly, right? And the man who was leading this was Jomo Kenyatta. So this guy had a diplomatic approach to these issues. Isusu ngatiresolve zvinhu zvedu peacefully, tirespectewo, ngatitauranei. So he would travel, he would go to Europe. So he traveled there, trying to garner support, and then he returned in 1946. And then the Kikuyu Central Assembly changed to the Kenyan African Union. Because as you can see, Kikuyu Central Assembly, it's just focusing on one tribe in a whole nation. But now this is now trying to incorporate everyone to represent a national interest. So now the Kenya African Union. This is in 1946. Now it's about to get interesting because now a very interesting figure is about to show up. Now that they have addressed this, you must also know that there were some people who were part of this. And some Kenyans who were a part of the KAU who had returned from fighting World War II as part of the British Army. And they've been scripted into the army as part of the British Army to fight World War II. Now Vadzoka, Avasina Mambasa, they are jobless. They are just sitting at home. They have no means to fend for their families. Army government now. So this was a militant group. It is dissatisfied. And the moment you know it is a militant group, you know that somehow they are not really in agreement with the approach. One of the differing approaches there. So these guys now, they formed what was known as the Mau Mau. Now, when you try to do your research, you will come up with so many different theories and suggestions of how this name came about. I know it's actually a reversal of language get out, acronym, abbreviation, this and that. But none of that is really our business. So we know there is a militant group, the Mau Mau, which is somewhat linked to the KAU. So now, an interesting figure steps in, called Dedan Kimathi. Ndakambona Cynthia achiverenga book rakanzi The Trial Dedan Kimathi ari corridor. I was impressed. Ndikati ndizvozoka kuti zvongoswera uchiverenga Muse and Boone nana Romeo and Juliet. So now, this Dedan Kimathi guy, tichikubvunza nezvake manje Cynthia. Akupusa. Pamwe amene angakatesa tsamba boyfriend yake imo, tichiti munhu ari kuita zvechikoro. So now this guy, he was born in 1920. So he's a very young guy around this time. This guy was born in 1920. So now this is the period of around 1946, 1947. So he joins the KAU, right? I join a KAU around this period. And then within 2 years, around the period of 1950, he had become secretary at a branch of the KAU, but this branch was controlled by the Mau Mau. Branch Ranga Achishandire. So this is when he's now also getting exposed to these militant ideas and these, radical ideas. And you must also know that personally this guy, he was also a violent guy. His history not to this guy was a bully. You not to a bully akashanda as a teacher, and then he was fired for violence on his students. So he was just a very radical guy. So in 1950, the Mau Mau is banned. Group. And you must know, it's not like every Kenyan then said, no, why are you banning the Mau Mau? No, there were some people who were loyalists, known as loyalists. These were loyal to the British government. Some locals, some Kenyans, some Kikuyu people and other tribes who were loyal to the British government and vital supporter. Even Jomo Kenyatta was distancing himself. Remember, I told you the approach that he was taking. He was saying, I'm taking the approach of diplomacy. So Jomo Kenyatta would distance himself from all the actions of the Mau Mau. So he would say, no, it's a good now. It's a tipo papo, and this goes support us. So in 1952, they killed a Kikuyu chief. There was a Kikuyu chief who was strongly against the Mau Mau, and he was a loyalist of the British government. This is October 1952, around 6 October in 1952. And in that same month, a white settler. Ipapo manje. That's when the settler says, government, why are you quiet? So on October 20 October 1952, that's when the government started retaliating. Now they are retaliating. Kwakaitwa Joke Squad operation. They are retaliating, and political leaders were arrested. A lot of political leaders were arrested, including Jomo Kenyatta, who was trying to distance himself. He was arrested. But the key error that the government made, the British government made, was it did not arrest those members of the Central Committee of the Mau Mau. Because what then these guys then did, the Mau Mau guys fled and to the areas of Mount Kenya and a place called Aberdeen, right? So then they set my base camps away. So now they are operating from there. So this is then what now triggers could intensify, because now these people are now operating from a base. So what happens in 1953, early 1953, March 26? What do these guys do? The Mau Mau, they go and they attacked a police station. They also attacked a detention center. A detention center. These Mau Mau people. In a place in Zilari, where they killed 97. Because they freed around 120 prisoners. Now, I end up a place called Lari. They killed around 97 women and children. So it's actually known as the Lari Massacre. So when they killed these women and children, the British government, they had to go international community. These people are savages. The Mau Mau, reason now. The land that these people were occupied in Lari had been occupied, these people were Kikuyu, had been occupied by other Kikuyu people, but they were displaced by the British government. Where they were settled elsewhere. Now these guys were saying, we are killing you for that. Why did you allow them to take your place? Because remember, people would swear an oath. In this oath, they would say things like, I will always obey and do not question my leader. I will never give away Torah as a spoil to the enemy. And also they would say, I will never sell my land or give my land to a white man, which is what these people had done on our Right. So this 1953 match, when the British government so these guys, 1953, they started pushing aggressively. So by the end of 1953, over 3,000 Mau Mau's were killed. 1,000 were caught. This recorder, we are not giving a record of the civilian. About the people who were caught and included, and one of the leaders of the Mau Mau, because now Dedan Kimathi, he is now playing a central role in the leadership of the Mau Mau. And the guy Ainzi taught. So he told you, but time are we still together there? So almost 100,000 supporters were arrested. So this was serious. Now the British government was now moving swiftly. Are we together, Richard? Now in 1954, Operation Anvil operation. In 1954, they did what they call Anvil operation. So with the Anvil operation, the British government took 20,000 of its force. The loyalists, the force, the guards, the Anvil operation. So in 1954, they did the Anvil operation. The British government took 20,000 people and they swept through Nairobi. Nairobi, and apprehending and taking and arresting everyone Then I never Cynthia. Right. They were arresting everyone and anyone they suspected to be a part of the Mau or be connected anyhow. And by time EOE, around 16,500 people were arrested. Now we have create concentration camps where people were being treated. Some were sexually abused. 11 people were killed after people were being killed, people were being harassed. These places were prone to diseases. Ndokubva watanga kuita yanzi villagization. Villagization vaenda mumavillage. And you know kuti in Africa ukaenda kumusha uko munhu anenge achigara uko mwachigara uko. Ivo vaibva vaunza vanhu vese vobva vagara panzvimbo padhuze nepadhuze. Vose vonzi vagara ipapo poiswa kafence. There was like some sort of reserves. Just like what used to happen here. Ndopaibva wedhwe kuti reserve. Paunonzwa vanhu vachiti tiri kumareserve. Vanotaura kuti nzvimbo dzanziri reserved. So now, this is what happens. The people are being treated in a way inorwadza, but and then also the Mau forces now they are being depleted. Nenyaya yekuti vanhu vemavillage vatorwa vaunganidzwa. Hapachakwanisi kuiswa support yevanhu vari musango kuti vapiwe chikafu, vanhu vaitwe sei. So this continues throughout 1955, and then in 1956, Dedan Kimathi is finally caught, and he was shot on the leg. He was actually shot by a British loyalist, but he was caught by a police officer ainzi Ian here anga anenguva achimutsvaga achiti I want to catch this guy. So in 1956 he was caught, and then he was shot on the leg. Ndokubva akawanikwa aine banga chete ndo raanga ainaro. Ndokubva then he was put to trial, and then he was sentenced. He was given a death sentence. He tried to appeal it. The appeal was dismissed. Then in 1957 he was executed by hanging. So akabva hangwa Dedan Kimathi. Imagine this guy was born in 1920. This is 1957, just 37 years, and he's already losing his life to the cause of liberation, which at this point seemed like a failed liberation. So he was survived by his wife, ainzi Mukami. Ndokubva ane tsamba yaakanyora kuna father, one of the missionaries who were there, akati ndinokumbiro, please make sure that my son is sent to school. Ndinokumbiro, please make sure my wife is near some sisters so that she can be comforted. And then also on top of that, on the day of his execution, they spoke the lengthy chat for about 2 hours. I have no regrets about the life I have lived. In my only crime, I am a Kenyan liberation fighter. And if I'm going to die, then my blood will be the water that waters the tree of independence. Those and then he was executed. And he died believing that, also the government will take care of his family because of his efforts. So some actually called it the failed liberation because it apparently did not bring anything. But it's only in 1960 when Kenya finally got its independence. So in 1960, Kenya got its independence. Jomo Kenyatta angabuda, and then he was first prime minister, and then he assumed the role of being president. So you can see that this rebellion contributed greatly because the British government spent around 55 million pounds in just trying to suppress the Mau Mau rebellion. So this had weakened the Mavona investment he had out to Kwanza. So this is what led to then the Kenyan independence. So the wife of Dedan Kimathi only died in 2023. Then at some point we remained around 2012. We have a three-bedroom house. We have a 3-bedroom house. And then a bit later, was on board double cable. Iyango information you it is going to be amazing. So I make sure every Tuesday, every Thursday, 3 p.m. you are in class of 5.